Elvis was the hottest star in the United States. When that restaurant wouldn't serve his black friends, though, he made a choice that cost him everything. They were his fans, his sponsors, and almost his whole business. After that, he became more than just a singer. It was May 12, 1956, in small town, Mississippi, where Elvis was born. He was hungry after a show at the Mississippi-Alabama Fair and Dairy Show that was packed to the brim. It wasn't just Elvis who was hungry after 2 hours of nonstop performance. The whole band was too. Elvis was on the road with 3 singers who were no longer just his band. The piano player Benjamin "Benny" Parker was 32 years old and from New Orleans. He could make keys sing in ways that Elvis had never heard before. People said that Marcus Green, who was 28 years old, had a direct line to God through his beat as a drummer. He was 35 years old and played the bass. Other artists would stop what they were doing to watch Samuel Wright play. It had been 6 months since these 3 men last played with Elvis. During that time, they became like family. A lot of the way, they were squished in the back of tour buses and talked about their lives, their goals, and their families back home. They came up with music in cheap motel rooms until dawn, playing with sounds that no one had ever heard before. They had kept each other safe from angry crowds, enjoyed each other's birthdays, and were there for each other when Marcus learned that his father had died. Benny taught Elvis the blues, and not just the notes. He taught him the soul behind the music, the pain and joy that made it so strong that it could make people cry. White artists didn't know about the rhythm patterns that Marcus showed Elvis from jazz clubs in New Orleans. Samuel played bass lines for him that made Elvis's hips move in ways that made young girls scream and their parents afraid. They were more than just friends. They were like brothers. However, this was 1956 in Mississippi, and no amount of skill, fame, or unity could change the laws that were in place. The best place to eat in Tupelo was Rosie's Diner. It was well known that Elvis had eaten there many times as a child when his family had the money. He could still smell the fresh bread and taste the famous fried chicken. He could also remember how Rosie, the owner's wife, would sneak him an extra piece of pie when no one was looking. Elvis told them, "Come on, fellas," as they pulled up to the famous red and white building. "You haven't lived until you've tried Rosie's chicken. I promise it's the best in Mississippi." Benny, Marcus, and Samuel all looked at each other. They knew this road well because they had been down it before. They knew it was going to happen, but they didn't want to make Elvis look bad by telling him the truth. "Elvis," Benny said slowly. He then said, "Maybe we should find somewhere else." "There's a place on the other side of town where nonsense," Elvis said, getting out of the car. "The best place in town is where I'm taking my band to dinner. You guys deserve that." The restaurant was dead silent as soon as they walked in. The talk stopped in the middle of a sentence. Near the lips, the forks got frozen. 4 guys, 1 white and 3 black, stood in the doorway and everyone turned to look at them. The waitress, Susan, a young woman who couldn't have been more than 19, looked scared. She knew who Elvis was right away. In Tupelo, everyone knew a boy from the town who had made it big. Her eyes kept going back and forth between Elvis and his friends and the kitchen, where the owner was probably watching. "Elvis Presley," she said, a little shaky in her voice. "It's an honor to have you here, but I'm afraid we need a table for 4, Elvis said with his famous smile, as if he didn't notice the tension. "If you have somewhere nice, please bring it. These men are great musicians and they're hungry." Susan's face turned pale. "Mr. Presley, I'm sorry, but I can't seat them. Do you get it? It's not me. It's just the rules." Elvis's smile got smaller. "Rules." Harold Mitchell came out of the kitchen. The owner of Rosie's Diner was a big man in his 50s who wore a white apron and looked like he wasn't going to back down. Harold had been in charge since Rosie died 2 years ago. "Elvis," Harold said in a strong but not mean voice. "You already know how things work here. You are welcome to stay. You're always welcome." He did, however, point to Benny, Marcus, and Samuel. "They need to go. There is a colored area in the back. Or, there are places on the other side of town that serve the same kind of food." It was so quiet in the diner that you could hear the wall clock. The biggest star in America, Elvis Presley, was being watched by each and every customer. Elvis looked at Harold, then at the other people in his band, and then back at Harold. People who knew him well saw that his jaw tightened, which was a sign that he was very angry. He put his hand on Elvis's shoulder. "Elvis, don't worry. We are going to wait outside. This is normal for us." We're used to hearing things like that, but those 4 words really hit Elvis hard. Getting used to it. Getting used to being treated badly. Used to being turned away. Black people used to eat while standing in alleyways while white people sat at tables inside. They were used to sleeping in their cars when places wouldn't let them. They're used to being told they're not good enough, welcome, or needed. Elvis thought about all the times in the last 6 months that his friends had left him alone while he checked into hotels. When he mentioned restaurants, they always said, "We'll get something later." They always said he was too naive or wealthy to question, which was an excuse. It was the ugly truth that they were hiding from him, the truth that they had to live with every day. Elvis said over and over, "They're kind," his voice tight with emotion. Elvis said, "I don't make the rules," and Harold crossed his arms. "These men are musicians, Harold. Artists, they're my friends. This is Mississippi. This is how things are. Would you like to eat here?" It was either them leaving or you all leaving. The next 10 seconds would change everything. Elvis walked up to the counter, picked up the phone that was there for customers to use, and called a number while everyone watched. The call lasted exactly 47 seconds, and Elvis spoke quietly, but those closest to him could pick out bits and pieces. "Hey, it's me, Rosie's Diner, refusing service. I need you to make some calls." Elvis turned around to face Harold and the whole restaurant when the call ended. "I was born in this town. I grew up 3 blocks from here," he said, his voice loud enough to be heard in the quiet restaurant. "When we had money, which wasn't often, my mom would bring me here. Rosie always gave me extra pie when we were having a hard time." He took a moment to make sure that everyone in the restaurant was paying attention. Rosie was nice. She saw people, not their skin color. She would be embarrassed by how bad this place has become. Harold's face turned red. "Wait a minute." Elvis cut in and said, "No. Wait. Benny, Marcus, and Samuel are the 3 guys who make my music sound the way it does. People know me because of them. Since they pay my bills, I can eat anywhere I want. And I'm not good enough for this place either if they aren't." Elvis looked at his band. "All right, guys, let's go. We'll find a place with good food and friendly people." Elvis turned around one more time as they walked out the door. "Harold, that phone call I just made was to every reporter I know. By tomorrow morning, everyone in America will know that Rosie's Diner won't serve the men who made Elvis Presley famous," he said. They left, leaving the restaurant full of shocked customers and a very pale owner. There was a lot of emotion in the silence as they walked to the car. Marcus was shaking, but it was hard to tell if he was angry or something else. Benny had tears in his eyes, and Samuel kept looking back at the diner as if he couldn't believe what had just happened. When they got to the car, Elvis leaned against it and breathed hard. His hands were shaking a little from the adrenaline. Benny said in a low voice, "You didn't have to do that, Elvis." Elvis spoke up, his voice strong even though he was upset. "Yes, I did," he said. "I absolutely did. How can I stand on stage and sing music that came from your culture, from your people, from your pain, joy, and soul? How can I do that and then give you this silent treatment?" He looked at each of them with fiery conviction in his eyes. Samuel stepped forward and hugged Elvis. He rarely spoke unless he had something important to say. "If I can't eat with you, I don't deserve to play with you. It's that simple." Then Marcus came along. They were holding each other in the parking lot of Rosie's Diner like brothers who had just come through a fight together. That's when Benny showed up. Because they had in a way. Elvis wasn't done yet, though. Not even close. Every newspaper in the South ran the story the next morning. The reports said that Elvis Presley left a restaurant in his hometown because of segregation. This newspaper called him a hero. Others said he was betraying Southern principles and called him a traitor. Radio stations were not sure if they should keep playing his songs. Advertisers stopped sponsoring the events. In just 1 week, Elvis lost 3 huge advertising deals worth more than $100,000. In 1956, radio stations in Alabama, Georgia, and Mississippi said they would not play his songs. A huge number of angry letters came in. Some of his fans burned his records in public as a protest. Colonel Tom Parker, who was his boss, was very angry. He told Elvis, "You've just lost a lot of money." Elvis asked right away, "Was it worth it?" "Yes." But this is what no one thought would happen. For every deal he lost in the South, Elvis got 2 in the North. Every radio station below the Mason-Dixon line that didn't play him added 3 stations above it to their schedule. 5 new fans bought his record for every fan who burned it. Girl teens who had been yelling for Elvis now saw him as more than just a good-looking singer. People thought he was a good person who did the right thing. People of color, who already liked his music, now saw him as a friend. A lot of young people in America made him their hero because they were sick of their parents' segregation rules. In just 1 month, Elvis's record sales tripled. Because of the debate, not because of it. Mississippi was where things really changed. After that walkout at Rosie's Diner, 23 businesses in the South changed their rules in a quiet way within 6 months. They didn't speak to the press or make any statements. They just started sitting people, no matter what color they were. If you turned away Elvis Presley's friends, bad things would happen. They did the math. Harold Mitchell waited longer than most people. For another year, Rosa's Diner happily put up signs that said whites only. Their customer base dropped, but people still didn't want to eat where Elvis had been turned away. First 60%, then 70%, and finally 80% of business was lost. Harold Mitchell quietly took down the signs in March 1957. There was no statement or apology. Instead, the hooks where the racist signs had been were left empty. It was too late, though. Rosa's Diner closed after 6 months because of the damage done. Elvis never bragged about this in public. He told a reporter about Rosie's closing, "I'm sad about it. Rosie was a good woman who made the best chicken in Mississippi. Her husband just forgot what she believed in." Benny Parker, Marcus Green, and Samuel Wright played with Elvis for 2 more years, appearing on his records and in his concerts. Elvis made sure they got paid the same as his white singers, stayed in the same hotels, and were revered the same way. Elvis was made an uncle to Marcus Green's daughter when she was born in 1957. In 1958, Elvis bought Benny Parker a new house after his old one burned down. While Samuel Wright's son was trying to get into college but wasn't able to, Elvis paid for him to go all 4 years. These actions were not made public. Elvis didn't call the press or try to get praise. In the right way, friends should look out for each other. He just took care of his friends. After many years, Benny Parker was asked about that day at Rosie's Diner in an interview in 1968. At that point, he was 44 years old and still played the piano and made songs. "Elvis could have left us outside of that place." Benny said that no one would have blamed him if he had eaten his chicken and said, "Sorry guys." It was 1956. Mississippi was that place. Things were just like that. He stopped for a moment as tears came to his eyes. But Elvis looked at Harold Mitchell and said, "If they're not good enough for this restaurant, then neither am I." That's when I knew I wasn't playing for Elvis Presley the singer. The man Elvis Presley hired me to play. People all over Mississippi, the South, and the United States heard about what happened at Rosie's Diner. It turned into a sign of using fame for something bigger than fame itself. It showed that sometimes the only way to get what's important is to lose everything. Rosa's Diner is no longer there, but there is a historical sign there now. It says, "This is the spot where, on May 12, 1956, Elvis Presley chose friendship over fame, equality over ease, and honesty over income." His decision to leave started a quiet revolution in Southern dining and reminded the whole country that change starts with one person saying, "Not anymore." Elvis Presley walked into that restaurant as the biggest star in the world. He left as more than that. A man who showed that fame doesn't mean anything if you don't fight for what's right. He lost his supporters. He lost airtime on the radio. He lost fans. But he got something much more valuable. People who knew that real greatness isn't measured by record sales or sold-out shows gave him their respect and believed in his humanity. It's defined by the times you have to pick between being safe and being brave, between accepting things as they are and taking action, or between keeping quiet and speaking out. Elvis made a brave choice. He made a choice. He picked to speak up. He didn't just change 23 places in the South when he did that. The American idea of fame changed because of him.